Never won, but once was winsome. I'm not too handy or too handsome, but I sure do like to play some. When I can be the fool, lose the plot and lose my cool. I lose my keys but not my conscience. Tell me, do you really want this? Tell me why you wanna go? I've tried to let it show. Well, I've been to the bottom and back so many times that I simply lost track. And I think I hit my limit, this time. Think I've hit my limit this time. I've been trying to take it easy, but still take it. Make it better if I break it. Sometimes that gets hard. If I slip to older ways, with poorer plans of darker days, and need a shoulder or a friend, I hope I see you then. Tell me why you wanna go? I've tried to let it show. I've been to the bottom and back so many times that I simply lost track. And I think I've hit my limit, this time.
A good Monday morning to you on this April 12th. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Real Talk, streaming live right now on YouTube and the Mixlr audio app. Maybe you're listening to us live. Maybe you're catching this later in the day, later in the week. We're grateful to have you here. A whole bunch to talk about over the course of the weekend. We're going to be following up, or let me say continuing our conversation on coal. In just about 10 minutes from now, we're going to be joined by a researcher, a toxicologist who planned to be with us on Friday, but sometimes, quite frankly, technical producer Samuel G. Brooks, as they say, shit happens, and we encountered some Wi-Fi issues with Mandy Olsgard, who's sorted it out, and she's going to be ready to go alongside Dr. Brad Stelfox and Colton Vessey, who's an environmental geoscientist, and we're going to get into some of the work that they're doing. A lot of it funded by, if I say private interests, it makes it sound somewhat nefarious. Let me say local landowners, farmers, ranchers, residents of the area around the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains in beautiful Alberta into British Columbia. That's where a lot of the coal mining is either happening, exploration's happening, or coal mining was set to occur until it got on the radar of a whole bunch of people that are pushing back. So we're going to follow up on that story coming up in about 10 minutes. We'll find out what the researchers are looking into. What's the data telling them? What is the irrefutable evidence, and why do they think that it's, I don't know if they're going to want to get into this when I say, why do they think that landowners are having to fund these studies? I wonder if they'll just stay on the science side and then want to stay out of the politics of it. I guess we'll find out. That's why we do these interviews. We couldn't ignore a study from MNP, Myers Norris Penny, last week that showed that 53% of Canadians say that they're $200 or less away from not being able to meet their monthly bills and their debt obligations. In other words, there is a very thin line for a lot of people when it comes to insolvency, or when it comes to what you might define as your financial security. That'll be using the word loosely. Personal finance educator Kelley Keehn is going to join us. We'll take a look at the real estate market in Canada right now. Depending on who you talk to, it's either a hot market, you should be bullish, or we're headed straight for an iceberg. It kind of depends on the experts, whether it's a real estate board, or whether it's realtors, or whether it's bankers, or whether it's elected officials. You're going to get a different story, it seems. You always go to Kelley, at least I do, when I'm trying to make sense of money matters, because she's able to she wouldn't use these words, but she dumbs it down. She makes financial matters more accessible for the rest of us, those of us that either feel some tension when finances come up, or maybe our eyes glaze over a little bit. So Kelley Keehn will join us. I'm trying to emotionally prepare myself for a conversation that's going to happen later in the show. It's going to happen about 75 minutes from now. Roberta White and her son Strider have agreed to join us. Roberta, her friends call her Bobby, lost her husband, Rob, suddenly last week when he at a dog park in Edmonton, Alberta, in our hometown, endeavored to save someone's dog. The dog belonging to a complete stranger. Rob was out walking his dog. He saw somebody else's dog out on river ice. Of course, it's spring melt and breakup, and the North Saskatchewan River that runs through the city of Edmonton can prove to be treacherous in these times. And Rob, obviously, I would imagine, felt that he could get out there and save this stranger's dog, and he made the move to do it, being described as a hero by his friends and his family, and by the thousands and thousands of complete strangers that have since, subsequent to his disappearance under an ice shelf on that fateful moment, have donated to a GoFundMe account. People are trying to put some dollars together to help Rob's family and to help them in this in-between time. How do you even put it? How do you even say it? Where they are no doubt still in shock. The depth of their grief, unimaginable. And so we're going to look to you today. As a matter of fact, Sam, why don't we put it up right now, just to let everybody know, if you are tuning in live, or if you're going to watch this later, if you're going to listen to this podcast later, you can find it at GoFundMe.com. You just search, Please Help to Honor Rob White's Life and Family. That's the name of the group. But even if you just Google GoFundMe Rob White or GoFundMe Honor Rob White, you're going to find it. As you can see, they've set a goal of $150,000, this to help this family move forward in its new reality. I mean, I'm going to be honest, just as a human being, I mean, here's the real talk. I don't even know the words to use. I don't know 75 minutes from now, when we talk to his now widow, his son, and his best pal, a guy by the name of Chris Barrett, who's a real talker. He reached out to us. I don't even know what to ask them. What on earth do you ask somebody that is in a state of shock like they are? The sudden loss of somebody who is described as one of the most wonderful, giving, caring, generous, they're saying eccentric kind of a guy, an artistic guy, a big thinker. We're going to hear stories about Rob, and we're going to provide a platform as Real Talkers here to celebrate his life in the way that we can, and we are going to look to you if it works with your budget, and if you feel led, and if you feel compelled to help out his family a little bit. And then, of course, there's the story that's making news across the country and even outside of Canada over the weekend, as dozens and dozens, they might want me to say hundreds. I didn't get a real aerial view of it, but let's say many people showed up at Grace Life Church. I used to have to qualify it and say, this is the church west of Edmonton where, congregants and pastors and staff are refusing to abide by public health orders, and they're gathering en masse every single Sunday, right up to fire code capacity, ignoring public health. I used to have to say all that. Now you just say Grace Life Church and you go, oh, that one. And it's come to represent a whole lot of things outside of what a church would typically come to represent. And that was evidence. It's been evidence over the past few days as federal politicians like Maxime Bernier and Derek Sloan and right-wing media sources have scrambled to get there and set up and start putting out their live videos and no doubt collecting emails by way of websites and raising money, and who knows where it's going to go. Well, over the weekend, all hell broke loose. You remember late last week, we told you it was happening live as we were recording one of our shows. RCMP were there assisting Alberta Health Services putting fences around the church. Well, as if I need to tell you what happened over the weekend, a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of capital P patriots showed up to tear down the fences. And we're going to get to that in just a second. Of course, this show is proudly presented by the team at Bitcoin Well. As a matter of fact, the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Well is going to be back on the show tomorrow morning taking your questions on crypto. I'm excited to ask Adam O'Brien what's going on in China. Have you paid attention to this? The Chinese government is getting into digital currency, and everybody around the world, I mean, people that pay attention to finance stories are going, this could be big. So we're going to find out what angle Adam takes on it tomorrow. He's the founder. He's the CEO of Bitcoin Well, which is proudly headquartered in Edmonton with Bitcoin ATMs across Canada. They're going public this year. Of course, we'll let you know when that's coming up. You'll find them under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Now, you know you can send us an email anytime to talk at ryanjesperson.com, and our inbox has been slammed for the last, the inbox has been slammed since the show launched about 4 months ago, but relatively speaking, it's been pedal to the metal for the past couple of weeks as we've invited you to CC us on your correspondence to your elected officials, and a lot of you are also CCing us on your correspondence to politicians, not necessarily based on complaints. Some of you are writing us in relation to the 17 Alberta United Conservative MLAs that have signed a letter essentially flying in the face or going up against their premier, their party leader, Jason Kenney's plan for Alberta through the course of this pandemic. That's a storyline worth following, and we will follow it. I mean, there's so much to keep an eye on today. You should see our handwritten, scribbled lists of don't forget to mention this, don't forget to mention that. There's a lot to get to. Sam Brooks knows we have visual elements locked and loaded. I'm saying, Sam, which story are we going to get to? And I know that you're going to be able to. We've got a lot of stuff to get through today, but why don't we show those the folks that are going to be watching this on YouTube? Here's exactly what we're talking about. This is via journalist Laura Krause, who was reporting for City News over the weekend. She was there yesterday on Sunday, April 11th, outside Grace Life Church. And as you can see, Sam will say dozens. Looks to me like certainly dozens, although some of these are RCMP officers as well. But people showing up to tear down the fences that were installed, this temporary fencing by Alberta Health Services under the protection of the RCMP late last week. This is because this church on repeated occasions has refused to adhere to the public health guidelines. They've been gathering en masse at full capacity as opposed to the mandated 15%. So you can see these are folks that have driven in. A big truck convoy came up. We're going to convoy. All the patriots convoyed up to Grace Life Church west of Edmonton over the weekend. You can see their RCMP. I hope that we were able to, as Canadian taxpayers, afford 2 or 3 N95 masks for each of these RCMP officers, because something tells me that COVID is swirled into this party like sprinkles in birthday cake ice cream. You couldn't pay me enough to walk through that crowd and breathe that air right now. But these are people, of course, that I'm sure are most concerned about spreading the word of the gospel, right? That's probably why these people are here. I would imagine that that's why everybody gathered there is so insistent that the church reopened, is because they've got a real heart for the Lord, and they've got a real heart for the. I'm sure that that's what's driving everybody to be there. It probably has nothing to do with questioning vaccination science. I bet you for me to draw a line between this and the carbon tax or Rachel Notley or Justin Trudeau would be completely ridiculous. I bet you that nobody there has any theories about Bill Gates and 5G technology and Huawei and TikTok and the United Nations and the International Monetary Fund. I bet you nobody has any theories about any of that having anything to do with any else, right? I mean, I bet that this is all just a bunch of people that are eager to ensure that people hear the life-saving story of the sanctifying power of the blood of Jesus Christ. I'm sure that's why everybody showed up this weekend. Of course I kid. This is a total debacle. This is an absolute disaster. And it's no wonder that so many people were paying attention to this story on Sunday as it developed and wondering what was going on, because it strikes a lot of people as somewhat incongruous with the positions that have been taken over protests around other matters in the province of Alberta. Like, what about this? I recognize this name. She's a real talker. Terry Grills joins us almost each and every morning live on the show. We love when she chimes in on the live chat. Well, she was on Twitter yesterday, and she had this to say. She said, when I stood outside Adriana Lagrange's office, that's Alberta's education minister, with the petition to ditch the curriculum, police showed up and told me I'd be charged if more than 10 people showed up because, quote, in case you aren't aware, there's a global pandemic. So Terry had the police show up at the education minister's office when Terry was there exercising her right to protest, threatening her that if more than 10 were gathered, that cops would be called and arrests would be made, that charges would be laid. Another commentator had this to say. Imagine what Jason Kenney would be saying and demanding of police if the fence is being torn down. You see there Laura Krause's video. Great reporting by her. I would have liked, quite frankly, just to throw in a little commentary. I would have liked to see her standing back a little bit further. I just don't trust. I know that she's courageous. I know she's doing a great job, but you just never know. Sometimes these things can go sideways. But imagine what would be happening if that was a pipeline protest. Well, we don't have to imagine. Andrew Leach, Dr. Andrew Leach, an economist, he pointed it, he kind of spelled it out. He said, Twitter search, apropos nothing in particular. What happens when you search Jason Kenney's Twitter handle and rule of law? And here are a few interesting examples. And he pointed out example after example over the past few years. There's always a tweet for everything, folks. There's always a tweet for everything. Let's get to the next one. Here you go. For example, when Mike Hudema of Greenpeace tweeted out that young people were occupying Kinder Morgan's offices in Calgary in protesting Kinder Morgan, Jason Kenney suggested cynically that this is what the NDP's social license has bought us. He says it's time to uphold the rule of law. Here was another one. In April of 2018, he says this is troubling. These are troubling numbers. These were protests around pipelines in Canada. Governments both in Ottawa and BC need to make, he's calling out Justin Trudeau, he's calling out NDP Premier John Horgan in BC. What they need to make clear is that the law will be fully enforced, even if they don't love the pipeline project, or even if they don't love lockdown measures, or even if they don't love public health measures during a pandemic. The rule of law must prevail, says Jason Kenney, who throws in a shot at federal party leader Jagmeet Singh, NDP party leader. It doesn't help, he says, that the MP for Burnaby is fostering this lawlessness mindset. That from Jason Kenney. So we know how the premier feels about the rule of law. It's important to uphold and impose the rule of law when protesters fly. I mean, this is what Bill 1 was all about, right? So shall we assume that charges are pending? Shall we assume that all of those that were videotaped by RCMP investigators, I'm sure, in the shadowy elements off camera with the long lenses, IDing everybody as best they could, shall we assume that there are dozens of charges that will be laid today following this demonstration at Grace Life Church? Of course not. The premier's got himself in a bit of a pickle right now. He's losing the right-wing flank. And I'm curious to know how you feel about it. We're going to drop into the live chat on this. We're going to get into some of the emails you've already sent. And, of course, you know where to find us with our hashtag RealTalkRJ. That's where you can get us on Twitter. This hashtag is presented each and every day by our friends at Park Power, and we're grateful for their support. If you use the promo code 2021-RealTalk at parkpower.ca today, they're going to give you $70 off your first bill. They do internet, electricity, and natural gas. $70 off your first bill with the promo code 2021-RealTalk. Commercial, residential, industrial, they've got you covered. Plus 10% of their profits go right back into the community as part of their profit-sharing plan at Park Power. Big shout out to the team at Friesen Brothers. Still, I love it. Literally every day I hear from a Real Talker. Literally every day that has visited the new Friesen Brothers store in South Edmonton for the first time. And basically the responses or the messages to me are just OMG. And I go, well, what did you expect? I've been singing the praises of this place for weeks, for months. It's not your average grocery store. Take the best grocery store you've ever been in and then blow that out of the water. Friesen Brothers has 15 locations across the province. They are Alberta grown and Alberta owned. All right, well, the subject of our Friday roundtable, our Real Talk roundtable, if you missed it, was coal mining in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. It's been a while since we talked about it, but as I said in my tweet on Friday, just because it's not leading the news headlines, it doesn't mean all activity has ground to a halt. As a matter of fact, landowners continue to advocate for their rights. People are pushing the provincial government to reconsider its entire approach to this file. And researchers are conducting, as we speak, studies on the environmental impacts of coal exploration in those mountains. I'm grateful to welcome to the program this morning Mandy Olsgard. Mandy is a senior toxicologist and the owner of a consulting firm, Integrated Toxicology Solutions. Prior to this, Mandy was the senior environmental toxicologist at the Alberta Energy Regulator, reporting to the chief environmental scientist. We're also grateful to welcome to the program Dr. Brad Stelfox. He's a landscape ecologist. He works on issues of cumulative effects of land use in Alberta and around the world. Dr. Brad Stelfox and Colton Vessey making his return to Real Talk. Colton's currently a PhD student at the University of Alberta in the Earth and Atmospheric Sciences Department. He's got both undergrad and graduate degrees in geological sciences, specializing in environmental geochemistry. So basically 3 people way smarter than me. Welcome to the show, and thank you all for being here on this Monday morning.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Mandy, we worked as best we could on Friday to get you on the show, but it just wasn't meant to happen. I'm so grateful that you've agreed to return here on this Monday morning. So let's just pick up where we left off. You've got such an interesting perspective here as a toxicologist working independently. You've also done work with the Alberta Energy Regulator. Can you take us into what you're studying right now and explain to us why it's relevant to this file that's of concern to so many Albertans?
Thanks again for getting me back on. So I'm going to undertake an independent study funded by the Pakisco Group, which is a group of landowners that are concerned about the coal mining developments. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and model the potential air impacts from the coal mining that's proposed in the eastern slope. So there's up to 6 mines over an area that's larger than the Tech Elk Valley mining region. And so we'll try and predict how the dust can move from those mines and be deposited to the water and the land, and then be exposing wildlife or fish or livestock. But we'll also be assessing the risks to human health from inhaling the dusts. And we'll also be looking at 2 gases that can be released from coal mines, which are sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides.
Okay, so to be clear, you're going to be studying based on work that is currently being done, and then we can extrapolate that data and apply it to future projects. Is that accurate?
So 2 pieces. So we're going to take the Grassy Mountain application, which is work that has been done, and we're going to validate some of the assumptions in that to see if they really hold water. And then we're also going to do the cumulative impact modeling, which the province hasn't provided and wasn't done in the most recent application for that Grassy Mountain.
Yeah, so Mandy, help us understand this. I mean, because you understand how the system works, having worked for Alberta's energy regulator as well. Why is it, do you think, maybe the question will have an obvious answer, I don't know, but landowners essentially are commissioning a lot of these studies. People are paying out of pocket. People are fundraising for these studies. It strikes me as something that either industry should be paying for, commissioned by government, or something that government should be undertaking. What's the deal? Help us understand as civilians.
Yeah, so industry pays to complete their own studies, but they often have a specific outcome in mind, and it's to get the development approved. So we find they make assumptions in these studies that might not accurately reflect the environment they're being proposed in, or they can tweak models, so maybe impacts can be different than if you had used other assumptions in your model. And so we'll be using a conservative approach. We'll be focusing on receptors of concern, we call them, so the actual landowners where the livestock are and the ranching operations. So we can really take it one step further and we can remove that bias.
Dr. Stelfox, who's commissioned the work that you're doing? Can you help us understand the context of your study?
Yeah, good morning, Ryan. The work that we're doing, myself with some colleagues, is for the Livingston Landowners Group, also called the LLG Group. They're a community of ranchers along the east slopes, a community generally south of folks that Mandy is representing, and it's a group that have expressed what I think are some pretty legitimate concerns about, whether the cost benefit outcome of a new coal mining industry in Southwest Alberta is going to outweigh all of the various kind of social, environmental, and economic consequences a new coal sector might create. So that's a group that we're working for.
Before we go any further, people that are listening to this on the podcast will have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, I'll try to paint a picture. Brad, I'm looking at where you're coming at us from. Sam, maybe we can take the wide shot, and I'm envisioning, to me, it may be a Volkswagen van, perhaps parked in a picturesque area on the top of a mountain. You've stepped away from your studies for 15 or 20 minutes to talk to us. How close am I to the truth here?
Well, a couple days ago, you would have been bang on. I was in the East Slopes at basically Crow's Nest Pass, looking at a variety of issues. And subsequently, Ryan, I've moved to Vernon. I've got some folks here that are old and need some help in a COVID world. So I'm sitting in a Dodge van in a farmer's field, hoping that the cell coverage is adequate. And so I'm kind of moving back and forth between helping parents and kind of coordinating a coal mining project.
You and everybody else, you're trying to save your family and you're trying to save the world. I love it, Dr. Stelfox, and what a marvel of technology that we can have you join us here from where you are. We're so appreciative for that. So how unusual is this project, or where is this project most unique? And I guess what I'm alluding to here is the fact that the general public has a great interest in this story. 6 months ago, or maybe 8 months ago, most people would have had no idea what this was all about.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have, ourselves, our families, we've enjoyed these slopes for many decades, generations. A lot of that was set up in a previous era, basically the Lougheed era. I think we're reminded that Peter Lougheed's 1976 policy basically said, look, you just can't do everything everywhere all the time. You gotta make some tough decisions. Where are you going to grow your food? Where are people going to live? Where are you going to get your water from? Clearly, the oil sands in Northeast Alberta has been a central economic engine. But the East Slopes has always been largely hands-off for extractive land uses because of the critical role it plays in water production. That water rolls off the East Slopes and feeds a very thirsty set of land uses downstream. So, we're looking mainly at the Old Man River drainage basin, and it's got a lot of thirsty land uses. And, given everything we know about climate change, it's certain that the frequency and the magnitude of these droughts is going to be higher in the future. So how are they going to feed themselves with water? And how is an additional land use, that of coal, likely to essentially make that water even less adequate? Not to mention that Alberta's got a responsibility of pushing half of the flow of the Old Man, the South Saskatchewan, into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. So there's a lot of concerns about whether or not coal mining is going to jeopardize the availability of existing land uses to meet their existing water demands. And there's a lot of concern about issues such as selenium and whether these coal mines are going to increase selenium in water, and that has known effects on reproductive impairment in fish, and things like calcite, which also comes with coal mining, which can harden our stream beds and affect food supply. There's a lot of issues that these ranchers want answers to, and I don't think, Ryan, they feel like the current process so far has adequately answered them. So they've reached out to people like Mandy and myself to gain some independent assessments of not only the benefits of coal mining, but what are the liabilities. And so I think that's what we're trying to focus on.
I want to circle back on the benefits of coal mining, because we don't want this to be some sort of a shame exercise where we pretend like, this province hasn't been built on harvesting natural resources, where we pretend like there's not economic benefits to mining, where we pretend like we're not in a jobs crisis right now, and many people would be eager to work, and I want to have those conversations, so we'll get there. But Colton, what's not lost on me is that we've got Mandy, and we'll circle back on this, explaining to us some of the concerns around dust. We're hearing about selenium. I don't think that we have to explain to people why water supply is pretty darn important. We're talking about alterations to the landscape, open pit mining, mountaintop mining. We'll talk about that. We're talking about species of animals that will no doubt be impacted by this. There's a number of different angles to take on this. What's your connection to this, Colton? I mean, my understanding is that you're taking a look specifically at Grassy Mountain right now, or at least with regards to part of what you're doing.
Yeah. So there's many considerations in open pit mining, especially coal mining, because it's so water intensive. They have to wash the coal once it's extracted, and they use around 1,000 liters of water per ton of coal, and 250 liters of that is fresh water. So when you look at a mine, like Grassy Mountain as an example, since they're the farthest along, they're estimating around 4.5 million tons of coal per year for around 23 to 25 years. And then that equates to about 1.1 billion liters of water, of fresh water per year. And then that has to be stored on site because it's considered contaminated. So my connection with this, since we last talked, I've kind of dug into the open access reports from Benga Mining Limited on the Grassy Mountain Coal Project. Tried to get into some of the details, see if there was any issues in their modeling and predictions. And I agree with Mandy and Brad. I think there are some details that were overlooked or kind of glossed over, assumptions that are really important, like the amount of selenium that they're estimating to remove. They assume they'll remove 99% in their reclamation plan. Using saturated rock fills, which is essentially a backfill pit with saturated water. And that's on the high side for these systems. Tech Resources is the company who's been really pushing this technology forward, and they're implementing it at a large scale, and they assume 95%. And that might seem like a small difference, but when you consider it over a long period of time, over a large scale, it can add up to the amount of contamination or leaching from these sites.
Colton, what's the definition of mountaintop mining to me? There's been a bit of a story here about who defines it, how it's defined by whom. Can you? I shouldn't be laughing because it's actually people will become enraged. But can you explain here how the definition is changing or attempted to be changed?
Yeah, it seems like the government has their own idea of what mountaintop mining is and mountaintop removal. They assume that it's removal, or at least 90% removal of the top of a mountain. But I think many others have more of a general definition, including myself, where it's just open pit mining in a mountainous area that through removal of overburden and coal seams, you'll have a change in terrain, slope.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, buddy. If anything, Colton, your audio just got a little bit better. But keep going. Colton, I don't think Colton can hear us. It's fine. Let's just circle back to Mandy. So Mandy, he's getting at something there. People are obviously concerned about the ecological impact of this with regards to the impact on the landscape as well. Do you believe that this type of thing can be put back together? We had somebody in layperson's terms on the show say once you dismantle or once you take a mountain apart, you can't put it back together. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I'm not a reclamation expert. Definitely as a toxicologist, I follow the chemicals. If I can just give a few examples. So, in the operational phase, when they're regulating the operating mine, you can't find a sector that Alberta Energy regulates that there hasn't been contamination. That's why we have, between $60 to $260 billion of liability in this province. So I don't think there's a good track record of regulating it while it operates. And then moving through to reclamation, those costs still exist there. So whether you can recreate the landscape, it comes down to economics and just where science is and the ability to do it. I don't know if that helped.
Okay, so you are a toxicologist, and I think a lot of people here are asking the very, it's not a simple question because there's a lot of nuance to it, but basically, is this worth it? Is it worth the risk to the environment or the impact to the environment if it creates jobs, if it helps Alberta out of a deficit position, if it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You know the arguments. So based on what you're seeing and based on your impression, what would you tell somebody that comes up and asks you, is it worth it to mine coal in the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah, and I'd say we can't answer that question yet because we do project-specific assessments. So you cannot understand the cumulative impacts. So what would be the risks to human health from being exposed to that particulate matter, to those dusts over the long term? Will you see increased asthmas? Will you see increased heart attacks? Those types of health effects. For the other chemicals that are released, are you going to see acidification or changes to the grazing allotments? So those studies haven't been done. That's why we need to put these 6 mines on the landscape, and we need to predict what those chemical and particulate concentrations look like so that we can assess the risks to the human health and the environmental and livestock health. And then we can have a open conversation about, are the risks worth the benefits? But right now we can only look at a single application and we can't understand that.
Brad, what do we know about the Old Man watershed? Do we need to start having I mean, there have been conversations in Western Canada, for that matter, around the world. People are talking about water supply, but whether you want to divert water for a racetrack or a big shopping development or a new community or whatever the case may be, if you want to grant permits that would allow water to be bottled and sold or commodified, if you're going to use water for resource extraction in this case, obviously, you have to consider long-term impacts. How is that watershed with regards to what we might define as capacity?
Yeah, I think that's a key question. I think to answer that question in our minds, we might be best to think of Southwest Alberta, the East Slopes, Old Man River Drainage Basin, and just move a few miles west, and that's into the Elk Valley of Southeast BC. So that's where this experiment essentially has already been run for the last 5 or 6 decades. And so they've increased the amount of coal production. I think they're up around 25 million metric tons. So a ton is, give or take, about a cubic meter, which I think everyone can wrap their head around. And as Colton mentioned, you've got to wash that coal before you can sell it. You've got to use water for dust control and many other reasons. So you can't produce coal without water. And I think we need to remember that on the Elk Valley side, there's much more water than we have on the Old Man, on the Alberta side, because we're essentially in a rain shadow. We don't get the rainfall and the snowfall that BC does. And I think all Albertans get that. The second part is the Elk Valley has very little demand for water other than coal in the valley itself. It's the dominant user, but that's different on the Alberta side. We have a long history of very thirsty land uses that depend on that water, adequate quantity and quality, whether it be irrigation or recreation or livestock or municipal. So we've got very little water on our side, and we've got a lot of demand, and we've got a highly regulated system in terms of trying to figure out the plumbing of who gets water where. But when you start stacking on the fact that the human population is going to continue to grow, and that other land uses also have increased expectations of growth, and Saskatchewan and Manitoba are looking for their share of the water. And then you stack on climate change. And once we get droughts that last 2 or 3 or 4 consecutive years, Ryan, I think a lot of hydrologists have significant concerns about whether we can adequately meet the current demands, let alone any new ones like the racetracks you talk about. So putting coal mining in the headwaters is likely to create large supply demand issues and give us very little wiggle room for land use. And that's not even talking about the water we're supposed to be leaving in the river for fish and ecosystem dynamics and all the natural capital it provides. So the East Slopes of Alberta is a precarious situation with an already existing set of land users that need water. Why, does it have the flexibility to add more land use like coal upstream with a very, very high water demand, as Colton mentioned?
Yeah, that's a good point, Brad, that you make. Oh, yeah, and by the way, there's the fish as well in the water that may be grateful if we leave some of that for them. Greg, who's watching now live on YouTube, leaves the comment in the chat. He says, even siltation from clearing the land to start mining coal will directly affect the downstream water quality, including harming our fish species. You're nodding on that, Brad. Are you surprised we're not hearing maybe some concern from other jurisdictions? Do you think this is just off people's radar? This is something that, let me show you this. Let me put this, I'll present this in the form of comments, but this is Alberta's Coal Policy Engagement Survey. This is what Corb Lund was so motivated on Friday's show to encourage people to fill out. It's at your.alberta.ca. You can find, it's easy. You just Google Alberta Coal Survey and you'll find it. But check this out. This is the first question. The very first question. To what extent does the management of Alberta's coal resources affect you? Major, moderate, minor, or no effect? I mean, to me, the question's preposterous. Am I wrong on this, Doctor?
Well, yeah, I hope all Albertans realize that a good chunk of the source of energy that turns on our lights is coal, thermal coal. And here, this new issue is metallurgical coal, coal that's destined to get down to Canada's West Slopes and be shipped to Southeast Asia for as coking coal. I think I've read the survey. I've participated in it. I'm not sure it does a good job of focusing on the key issues that I think are important, which is primarily water. And so I'd like to see that particular topic front and center. The survey needs to, I think, educate people who may not be aware of this issue of why the East Slopes were set aside. It's this whole concept. You just can't do everything everywhere all the time. And this place in Southwest Alberta that used to be so big with so few people is now exactly the opposite. These are very busy landscapes, and there's very little wiggle room. We've got to get it right, and coal could be just adding, that proverbial big straw on the camel's back that jeopardizes a lot of other people, their health, and other land uses. So it's deserving of this question.
Daniel Boyd is watching in live. He says, wow, another great panel. He says we need to keep this issue in the news. Colton, for people that want, you have engaged citizens that are going to watch and listen to this interview. They want to know more about this. They want to understand this. They want to ensure that they're focusing on the key issues, the important issues, that they keep their eye on the ball, so to speak. Now, what does the average civilian need to keep in mind as we continue to attempt to understand the magnitude of this story, of this reality?
Yeah, that's a good question. And sorry about earlier, my headphones decided to die on me.
No worries, buddy.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer. There's so many different topics in mining, especially open pit mining, because there's so many considerations like we've been talking about. And there's lots of good resources out there, though, especially the Canadian Parks and Wildlife Society in Alberta. They've been putting out lots of newsletters with great information. The Alberta Wilderness Association also has some online videos on YouTube that has good information as well. And I think, like I mentioned last time, people can always reach out to myself for more information. I've done a few presentations for a couple counties, and the fundraiser that was mentioned on Friday, I've done a couple presentations for that as well, where I talk about what is mine drainage, what are reclamation plans and strategies, and I think that's good material. It's more easily digestible as well.
Mandy, this is a question for you. You've worked with the Alberta Energy Regulator for many years. You're very familiar with how it works. There's a lot of cynicism from people about whether or not the AER can be trusted, whose interests it serves, whether or not it has any teeth when it comes to enforcing anything. Can the Alberta Energy Regulator be trusted? Should people trust the process?
That's tricky. I would say they don't have a great track record in the province. The political environment definitely sways the decisions. And as an example, I worked there under an NDP government, and it was, decisions were made every day that I think technical experts and the subject matter experts were pushing back on, but there was a lot of sway. Just quickly to add, so policy sets our standards and guidelines. So when we hear the government telling us that we have world-class standards, well, if you just look at the guidelines I'll be using for, say, particulate matter, the World Health Organization has more stringent or more protective guidelines in many cases. In the case of selenium for irrigation, which is a huge concern for the landowners, BC has a more stringent or lower guideline. So these are facts. People can pull this information and they can question the regulator and the policymakers themselves just by comparing numbers. I have a lot of concerns about whether they can regulate this to prevent contamination. And again, we see this in other sectors. Sour gas facilities, we have large sulfolane contamination where drinking waters had to be supplied to residents and communities. We have a lot of liability around conventional oil and gas. This happens while you develop. It is just part of the process. How you regulate it and the enforcement and the compliance from our regulator, that's how you manage and mitigate these impacts. That's what I don't see happening.
Brad, there's been so much made of Peter Lougheed's 1976 coal policy, and we were lucky enough to have David Luff with us on Friday, who was one of the kind of the co-architects of that policy, and he's been familiar with it for many years. When it comes to Energy Minister Sonia Savage asserting that this government's going to take a look and update the policy, and I don't blame people for having 1,000 reasons to be very concerned about that, and to be, I keep using the word cynical. What does that say? I should find another word. But the fact of the matter is, it's a constant thread throughout this. People concerned about what a new coal policy might look like, or who it might be favorable to, or what it might open the door to. Especially if people have concerns with regards to levels of government, the energy regulator, et cetera. With regards to the premise of that coal policy and what you would like to see introduced by this government to replace it, if they're going to update it or replace it, what was the spirit of that coal policy? What was the most important element to it that members of the public should demand to see in whatever this government comes up with?
Yeah, I think that's a key question. One of the most special days I ever had was, it's more than a decade ago, riding horseback with Peter Lougheed along portions of the East Slopes and just listening to his words about, and the guy's not an ecologist, but he just had this innate understanding that the East Slopes receives all this precipitation and snow and then pushes it out on the landscapes in good quantity and good quality for all the land uses. And he understood that you could very easily destroy that. So when that policy was enshrined in 76, it was a recognition by Premier Lougheed and his government and the people of Alberta of the primacy of watershed protection. So I don't think water chemically has changed in the last several decades. If anything, Albertans now know a lot more about it. Our province is bigger in population. We know how easy it is to destroy water quality and quantity. So if someone wants to revisit that policy and modernize it, sure, I guess that's probably wise, but I would think Albertans would realize even more strongly today than it did several decades ago how fragile water is and how critically important it is to manage it. So if that policy is going to be updated, I think it needs to look at the current suite of land uses, even recreation and forestry and where we live. Are we doing a good job of maintaining good water quality and quantity today? Rather than from some perspective of a priority, we need to put another land use in it, like coal mining, and then perhaps reword this coal policy in such a fashion as to encourage that. So either water is front and center or it's not. And I wonder about whether this current administration is recognizing that by tinkering around with water quality, it's not just an immediate problem, but if it's coal, it's going to be for several generations. These landscapes are going to be modified in profound ways. And the way in which we're going to change the plumbing of the water movement and the water quality is something that I just think you can't overstate. So, if you're going to change that coal policy, let's remind ourselves that its primary purpose is water. And how does coal mining fit in to good water quality and quantity for us, our kids, our grandkids? And if we don't keep our eye on the ball, we may lose something that an earlier generation had some very visionary policy priorities about. And that's my concern.
I know that, conversations like this, we could talk for 3 or 4 or 10 hours. I mean, we could probably do a week of shows on this and still find our coverage to be somewhat inadequate. So I'll ask the three of you as best we can as I thank you for your time now and allow you to get back to this important work that you're doing, the whole reason why you're here talking to us. Maybe I'll ask, starting with Colton, for a closing thought, something that you maybe haven't had a chance to mention yet that's important for people to know. Maybe it's an assignment, marching orders for each of us. Maybe it's a tidbit or a piece of information that you think might be helpful to citizens trying to enlighten themselves or to educate themselves on this. Colton, what would be your closing remarks, so to speak?
Yeah, so I guess our whole conversation has been focused around cumulative impacts, and I think that's the most important consideration. So Grassy Mountain Coal Project is just one mine, and there's many others being proposed. So what are the impacts that all those mines will have on the area in total when you consider all the open pits, all the changes to the landscape? There's studies out of the United States and the Appalachia where they have extensive coal mining, where they found that when greater than around 2.5% of the landscape was disturbed, they saw changes in the watershed and its capacity and its quality as well. And with that as well, how will this impact groundwater? How will these closure plans change the base flow into these streams that are being fed yearly? So there's a lot of considerations at these scales, and the consulting reports probably have errors in them as well because they have to make large assumptions. So it's great that what Brad and Mandy are doing with their studies. Good to get some other input and some backup on this as well.
Mandy?
I guess I would say we have data available. Look to Elk Valley. Look to a bit northern in Alberta. We have operating coal mines. We have documented information on the potential impacts, the costs of those impacts to human health, environmental health, and economically. All we have to do is pull that data and really demand that the government and the regulator incorporate that into their decision making. The data is there, but we need to have a conversation about it.
I'm grateful that probably the highest with apologies to everybody here, all the educated and experienced professionals, easily the highest profile individual to become involved in this conversation is singer-songwriter Corb Lund, and I appreciate that he's watching this live right now. He says, it blows my mind that private landowners have to pay for these air and water impact studies out of their own pockets because the government hasn't bothered to do them. He says it's absolutely unbelievable. And I would imagine that Corb's not alone on that. Kind of blew my mind to hear about it, although at the same time, in this current political time, nothing really surprises me anymore. Dr. Stelfox, what would be your final word?
Well, maybe to compliment Mandy and Colton because they had some key issues is, I would implore Albertans to think about what I call meaningful time. How do the short-term benefits that coal mining might provide compare to the multi-generational liabilities that not only us but our kids and our grandkids are going to encounter, and we do not have the technologies to solve the problems that coal mining creates today. So we can either be a me here now type of society, it's about me, it's right now, it's right here, or we can kind of back up and think about it's about broad society, it's about multi-generations, and it's about regional effects. And depending on what kind of person you are, it kind of leads you towards, coal mining right now is great, or my goodness, it's creating a liability that is going to, we're going to have to live with for a long period of time. And I'd encourage people to think with that kind of scale and perspective.
That's a hell of a thing to hear from an educated professional like you, Doctor. We don't have the technologies to solve the problems that coal mining causes today. That's really sobering. Mandy, I guess I'm grateful that the Wi-Fi conked out on us on Friday, because that meant that we got to bring the three of you here and continue this conversation and infuse a whole bunch of irrefutable evidence into a conversation that can sometimes become so emotional and steer away from fact. My sincere thanks to Colton Vessey, Mandy Olsgard, and Dr. Brad Stelfox. Thanks to the three of you for what you're doing right now for the rest of us. We appreciate it.
Good day.
Thanks for having us.
There you go. And now Dr. Stelfox can just open up that door and just breathe in the fresh air of being outside. I love that.
This is the second time that we've had an interview, I think, from the side of a mountain, and I want nothing more than to dive through the Zoom and into his van with him, because that just, How much I would love to be on the side of a mountain.
Did we? I can't remember if we had this conversation. And I'll note that Kelley Keehn is probably ready to rock right now, and she's waiting for this. So I won't wax poetic for too long here. But I can't remember if we had the conversation on air or off air about that Kevin Van Tighem interview that we did when he was in his van, and I felt like such an absolute idiot after the interview. Do you remember this?
I think we had that conversation on air immediately after we let him go.
If you don't remember Kevin Van Tighem, he's written 20 books or something like that. He's former superintendent of Banff National Park. He's a columnist. He's just a all around. I mean, if you want to talk about park management and species, and I mean, Van Tighem's just one of the go-tos. He's one of my favorite guys to talk to. And we're having this conversation about coal exploration, and he's sitting in his van, and he's like on the top of a mountain. We did the whole interview from the van, and then at the end I'm thinking, why didn't we get him to go outside? He had the landscape behind him, which is the landscape we were talking about. And we didn't get him to go outside. And I've just that kind of thing will drive me crazy. That kept me awake for like a week.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, didn't he tell us that he specifically drove up a hill to a lookout point to get better reception?
To get better reception.
Yeah, I know.
So he's basically on the top of the mountain, this absolutely beautiful landscape, and we're sitting there with nothing wrong with his van, but he was in his van the whole time. Anyway, so a lot to sort through there. We don't have the technologies to solve the problems that coal mining causes today. That's what I'm taking from that interview. Kelley Keehn's coming up in 60 seconds or less. This is a chance for us to remind you that the teams at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge right now have the best selection in the province of the 2021 Jeep lineup, including the Cherokee Sport 4x4. This is the one that typically goes for just over $40,000, $44,750. It's on sale right now in Sherwood Park and St. Albert for $34,990. These are the ones with that 3.2-liter V6. Nice little power pack there, 9-speed automatic transmission. You've got the heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, heated front seats, remote starter, and the touch screen with integrated Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay. So you get all these nice bells and whistles for $34,990. Plus everything else you expect, the backup camera, the auto headlights, the sunscreen tinted glass. Nice little touches in the 2021 Jeep Cherokee Sport. Also, a big shout out to the team at Westworld Computers. Is it going to put you in a tough spot, Sam, to call up that tweet that we got over the weekend? I loved this. I loved seeing this interaction happening live on social media. One of our real talkers by the name of Corrine reached out. She said, "Hey, Westworld, Jespo sent me. I need a replacement charger cord for my MacBook Pro back from 2013. Can you please help me out?" The conversation ensued. She said, "I need it in Sylvan Lake." And the team at Westworld, I think it was within 3 minutes. They were like, "Order it off our website. We'll ship it to you. We'll get it to you ASAP." It's what they've been doing for more than 40 years. Family owned and, of course, proud to be independent. The Real Talk studio is powered by Westworld Computers, and your home or workspace can be too. Go see Daryl and his team and make sure you tell them you heard about it on Real Talk. Well, this is a survey that jumped out at us. A new survey out just last week, a few days ago, by Myers-Norris Penny, by MNP, found that 53% of respondents, Canadians polled, said that they're $200 or less away from not being able to meet their monthly bills, their debt obligations. I've known Kelley Keehn for a long time. If you check her out at kelleykehn.com, you'll see her middle name is Money. She's an award-winning, best-selling author of more than 10 books. You've probably seen her on national broadcasts talking about personal finance education. A very good friend of mine. It's great to see you here making your Real Talk debut. What a moment.
Yeah. Good morning, Ryan. Thank you for having me. Great to be with you. Hate talking about debt and how hard people are struggling still, but we've got some tips, so always love having a conversation with you.
Well, people have been looking at your books, and people have been talking to you and bringing you in. You speak to huge groups of people. Well, at least you used to when we were allowed to gather, and you will soon again. But this pandemic, I mean, what a wrench to be thrown in. It's a whole different conversation now, isn't it? I mean, when we talk debt, when we talk about, financial instability or insecurity, I mean, how dramatically has the conversation changed with regards to what you're talking about?
Yeah, 100%, Ryan. And yeah, still talking, virtually to lots of people, but it threw a stick of dynamite on people's finances. this survey that came out with MNP, so these are insolvency trustees, and they come out with this survey every year, and those numbers really haven't changed a ton. What was interesting in that survey, though, is 6 in 10 thought that because we're in a low interest rate environment, it's actually a good time to buy things that they can't afford, which is crazy. But what really emerged from the pandemic was, you hear the K-shaped recovery and all that type of stuff, which doesn't really put a fine point on how many people are still struggling, because there's two camps, Ryan, as you know, those that are really having a hard time with their finances, suffering in silence. They don't know what to do. They've deferred their mortgages and their loans and things of that sort as much as they can. And then those that weren't traveling and are renovating and are sitting on cash. So it really has, as you said, put a wrench on people's finances, but also shown these two camps that have emerged. And Ryan, by the way, too, those people that are sitting on cash, I'm hearing from them that they're, embarrassed and shameful to talk about that cash that they're sitting on. They feel bad for the people that don't have money. So yeah, I always want people to talk about money, regardless if you have it or you don't have it, because by not talking about it doesn't make your situation better.
So people are right now, some people are going to say we're going to control everything that we can. And I'm sure that some have taken a lot of steps, whether, probably the very first step was to dial back RSP contributions or to quit the RESP contributions for a while. A lot of people deferred mortgages. Some people obviously canceling family vacations or maybe liquidating some assets as best they could. Go to Kijiji right now and search holiday trailers or search quads or boats. There's been a lot of action on those, and actually a lot of pretty bullish market in the recreational vehicle department right now. But some people are going to be getting to the point now where they're going to have to get even more creative. Right? If they're that 53% where $200 is the difference between big time stress or making it through another month, what's your message to those people that feel like they're kind of hanging in the balance right now, having taken steps as best they could for a number of months now already?
Yeah, and this survey also revealed that of that 53%, 30% are already insolvent, meaning they can't pay their bills. So here's what I really worry about, Ryan, for these individuals is, like you said, maybe they cashed out savings or RSPs. Maybe there was another option. Because here's the thing, when you act alone, let's just take that for example, you need $1,000. You take it out of your RSPs, you're not getting $1,000 in your hand. You're losing that room forever. You can't put it back, and you're probably going to pay more money at tax time. So before you make any moves that you think are required, if it's going for a ridiculously high interest rate payday loan, taking a cash advance from your credit card, here's the thing. Here's the big takeaway, Ryan. When we are stressed, our vision narrows. And this makes sense evolutionarily. We needed a narrow vision to go and capture our kill and be focused on that hunt. The problem is when you're financially taxed and financially stressed, especially for a long time, your vision is also narrowed, and that is exactly when you need your gaze widened. How do you do that? Probably not by yourself. You need to reach out for help. So if the creditors are screaming at you, the calls are coming in, you don't know if you can make ends meet, or you already are not making ends meet, you're using a credit card to pay a credit card, things of that sort, that's when you need to reach out for help to someone like a non-profit credit counselor. I underscore nonprofit. There's a lot of bad actors out there. And Ryan, you can give these folks a call and email for free, have a virtual meeting. Why not take all the free advice that you can get? And, yes, there may be some paths you have to take. Maybe bankruptcy is an option. Maybe a plan that a credit counselor can offer you is an option. But at least get your options first before you act. Make sure you widen that gaze, if you will. And these people are also going to take that shame and embarrassment away. I don't know how else you do it. You and I have talked before. You can get on the phone and you can talk to your creditors. And by all means, call your bank. Put the problem in their hands. I think what's most important for people to know is one thing that COVID did do was, I think, open up a lot of conversations about a lack of money. And the banks are actually really understanding of that. So don't sit in silence and try to figure it out yourself. Give them a call and see what options there are.
You touched on something I think that's so important. And when it like money and stigma, it's such an symbiotic relationship, isn't it? And for a lot of people to find out, the worst thing that could happen to so many of us would be that our credit card statements would be made public, right? And people would see how much we're carrying on credit cards at 18% interest and what we are using our credit cards for, and a lot of times how the veneer on the outside doesn't always match the reality or the bottom line. This pandemic has changed a lot of that, I think, in the sense that maybe, and correct me if you disagree, but I bet you that the door is open now for more people to almost, I don't want to say blame, but to simply say, we are in a tough spot financially. And then you just go, the pandemic, right? And everyone goes, for sure. And there's more understanding now. It's almost like there's this whole gang of people that can come together and say, we've all been through the ringer here. Do you think some of the stigma of debt is taken away? Are you optimistic that people might find a window here to have those conversations?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. So first of all, you used the word money, and then later you said debt. So I like to be really clear about it that people don't mind talking about money. We don't mind talking about, the RSP versus the TFSA versus some tax strategies. That we don't mind talking about. You're right. I think that the pandemic gave an opening because it was no one's fault. It's not your fault if you're suffering financially. It's not your fault if you kept upgrading your restaurant, trying to make it COVID friendly, doing all of this, and then the government keeps shutting it down and you can't pay your bills and your staff. That is not your fault. Doesn't still make it easy. I agree, Ryan. It does allow this camaraderie that so many people are in it, but it's still a big taboo. So, when it's a taboo and we're not talking about it, and I updated my last book for a COVID edition, and one of the case studies, again, I was talking about that narrowing of vision and not talking about it. You also mentioned a high interest rate credit card of 18%. I wish that was the highest rate that I see from a lot of people. It's 24%, 29%. And if you read the fine print, when so many people don't, because again, vision narrowed, are looking at the fine print, you will maybe see statements like, hey, yeah, you have an 18% interest rate credit card. If you miss a payment, it's going up to 24% for at least 6 months. See, this is what happens when people are financially stressed. They're not talking about their money. They're not looking, or their lack of money. They're not looking at their debt. And something that you could do, but you usually can't do once your payments are late, is call up your credit card company and say, hey, you don't want to be in that 18% credit card. What do you have for 12.99%? They'll move you to that lower interest rate credit card. And if you do nothing else but make your minimum payment, you're going to save some huge percentage. Where can you get those kind of percentage points on any investment products right now?
Kelley, I always want to commit in conversations like these every time you're on, and you've heard you've been we've had there might as well be this confessional window here between this split screen. You've heard, because I always want to come here with my own vulnerability and with my own honesty and open the door for other people. And I will say that one of the things I'm really bad at is taking the time to look into how much we're paying for what and where the fees are and where we could dial back. And I bet you, and I don't know if it's laziness or maybe I just don't like to dig into the nitty gritty, but if we tweaked our cable package and if we took advantage of offers on rebates or refunds, or if we had the conversations with the credit card companies or negotiated a difference on our line of credit or dug into all the different options that there are, I bet you that we could find a pretty decent amount of money that we're shelling out every single month that we didn't have to. Is the average person inclined to do that work, though?
No, no, we're not. Like you said, it's not fun. And I'm not a coupon clipper. I'm not really a rebate person. I don't really enjoy that either, by the way. I'm not a budgeter. I actually don't think budgets work. I think they're like diets. I think for the people that they work great. For the rest of us, they're too constrictive. And what happens is when you're sacrificing all of the time, then we go bananas. Then we eat the whole pie, right? But what I do recommend is that people try out what I call my 30-day anti-budget. I do it myself. I make my husband do it. We do it twice a year. I don't enjoy it, but it's always an exercise in awareness And we always find money. So what is the anti-budget? You're just tracking your spending for 30 days. Now, if you use your bank app, use one credit card, one debit card, your bank is going to do a lot of that tracking for you. But like you said, Ryan, it's like digging into your home insurance policy, your auto insurance policy, maybe getting on the phone if you have credit card debt and seeing if you can get a better rate. But what I want people to do is see where their money's going. So then you track it for 30 days, you see your categories. Pre-COVID, it was maybe eating out, traveling. During COVID, and again, for research for my newest book, the COVID edition, I looked at what people were spending on average, on booze, online gambling, weed, delivery services. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but that adds up to just about $5,000 per year during COVID. If you could just cut that in half. So the point of this exercise is looking at first what you're spending monthly, the categories, then multiply it by 12, right? Now you see, whoa, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I got so many subscriptions during COVID because I generally was traveling. Then I was home. Oh yeah, I need that, meditation app. I need that, advanced, whatever. And then we do the 30-day anti-budget, times it by 12 and go, wow, that's a lot of money on apps that I only used for the first month during the pandemic. I better cancel them. So don't pay attention every single day, but just for 30 days, once or twice a year, can you dig into your finances, see where you can trim the fat? No budgeting, I promise.
So, this is a brand new business for the most part. And Real Talk, the show, the flagship show of Relay Communications. And we've established this and we've started the business and I've brought on a couple mentors. And one of them was taking a look at what we're spending on and what we're subscribing to and we're putting. And he says you can always tell the difference between a first-year entrepreneur and a second-year entrepreneur. And he says you'll be spending less next year. He tells me this is coming. So we're learning this. We're putting this into practice as you talk about it. Kelley, I know that you're a personal finance educator, so I don't typically talk to you very frequently about like big government programs or trends that you see in the markets. But I am curious to pick your brain on how you feel the provincial or federal governments have done. Most especially, I think the big funding stuff has been the federal government through small business loans or CERB, the emergency response benefit, that $2,000 a month that most people are familiar with. How would you characterize the job that the federal government did? And do you have concerns about maybe the application or the impact that it had on people's personal finances? Do you have an angle on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough because it was such a tough time. Like, it was drinking from a fire hose, I remember. All of the national media I was doing. And as I was doing all of that national media, when the pandemic hit, Ryan, we were getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like texts and email. Like, people were so desperate for support. So in all fairness to the government, there was this incredible desperation to get money out. Now, in hindsight, and it's always easy to be that critic in hindsight, yeah, I wish that, for example, there would have been maybe a test like, what is your net worth? Like, if you had an incredible net worth and you only had $5,000 of income and that was disrupted by COVID, should you have been getting all of the CERB payments? Meanwhile, someone with zero net worth was only getting the equivalent of really minimum wage. But again, easy to be a critic. Was there enough done for small business? No, I absolutely do not think there was. As an entrepreneur, as a small business owner myself, I think there definitely could have been a lot more done there to simply encourage that business owner that was shut down. I mean, I wasn't shut down, but so many people were. And the minimum that they got was probably CEBA if they were a super small business owner. Was it enough? I don't think it was enough. Certainly wasn't enough for the individual either. I mean, if you couldn't work, what's $2,000 a month? It's really it's been a very difficult situation. But that's, I guess, my comments, Ryan.
Well, it's going to be interesting too.
Right?
People and people right now are. There's going to be a lot of storylines that develop over the next little while. Like people right now that are finishing up their taxes or whatever. I think there's going to be tax implications for a lot of people with the CERB that maybe they weren't preparing for it, didn't set money aside. And for a lot of people where money's really tight, just wait till you have CRA on your ass. And you owe them several $1,000, and then maybe we'll be having this conversation a few months down the line. Kelley, before we run out of time, and I know that you've got a lot to get to today, the housing bubble story, depending on who you talk to, whether it's like real estate boards or realtors or bankers or elected officials, everybody has a different opinion on who should intervene or whether someone should intervene or what should be done or whether you let the market run its course. We've seen some policies, for example, in BC, most especially in Vancouver, to try to cool housing markets, but not everybody believes that's a good idea. And now, as you pointed out, interest rates are favorable. I heard what a buddy just got on a 5-rate fixed. It was a 5-year fixed. It was unbelievable, like way below 2%. And so they're, upping. They're taking on a bigger mortgage. They're excited to get into a bigger home. A lot of people might see opportunity right now, maybe a good time to sell. No, I'll acknowledge that, your wheelhouse is personal finances. So what would you advise people that are paying attention to the headlines, thinking if they're going to get in, they better get in now. If they're going to sell, maybe they should sell now. What's something to think about to help people determine the right move for them?
Yeah, and FOMO is such a thing, isn't it? It's like, this is the time, I gotta get in. You need to get in when it's right for you. You need to sell when it's right for you because, here's a thought too, Ryan. So what are you going to do? You're going to sell and buy something? Like, are you going to rent? Are you going to move to a less expensive market? I'm generally in Toronto, so you might move to Hamilton, or let's say you move from Edmonton to Leduc. Like, where are you going to go? So take the emotion out of it. And also take the low interest rate environment out of it as well, because that's the whole point of these stress tests that the government enacted a couple of years ago and are talking about is that can you handle it when interest rates go up? Now, when are they going to go up? How much are they going to go up? No one knows. But yeah, we are at rock bottom. So it's all about affordability and just taking that emotion out of it. Homeownership isn't right for everyone. And also, don't listen to everything you hear on the news, because that Angus Reid poll that you're talking about was like, I think it was May 2020. They were saying that real estate prices were going to drop by about 18-20%. We've seen anything but. They've increased pretty much, 25-30%. So take the emotions out of it. Be careful what you listen to. See a financial planner. Crunch the numbers. Negotiate with your banker.
There you have it. You can find more at KelleyKeehn.com. Kelley's book, Talk Money to Me, well worth checking out. And, of course, you can follow Kelley on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for making time for us. It's good to have you here on the show.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend. Thanks,
you got
Ryan.
it. Yeah, we'll talk to you again. We're going to get to I'm just going to try to prepare you emotionally, an absolutely heartbreaking story in just a second. It's a story that I know that most people are trying to wrap their minds around. An Edmonton man who is presumed dead after falling through ice on the North Saskatchewan River, trying to ultimately rescuing a stranger's dog, despite the best efforts of search and rescue crews, including Edmonton Fire Rescue, the Stars Air Ambulance. The chopper was up there, a couple choppers, the Edmonton Fire in the water. Thousands of people are coming together to raise support for this family, and we're going to talk to them in just a second. Before we do, I wanted to take a quick second to remind you that we're going to be getting to our question of the week, the results of that, a little later on in this broadcast. But our new question of the week is up, and we ask you each and every week to pop by our website, ryanjesperson.com, and you'll see it right there. If you're on our Real Talk panel, you already will have received an email. Sam's going to tell me to go to full screen here, so there I will. Sam, it looks so much better when I do that, doesn't it? You go to ryanjesperson.com. You can see here, you click on Question of the Week. This week, we're asking you, after months of openly flouting public health COVID-19 guidelines by holding overcapacity services without appropriate social distancing, Grace Life Church has been physically shut down by Alberta Health Services, fencing placed around the church, RCMP there to enforce. We probably don't have to tell you over the weekend that everything went sideways. As a matter of fact, yesterday, as dozens of people showed up as part of truck convoys, groups calling themselves Patriots with a capital P, showing up to send a very clear message that they will not have their rights trampled on, tearing down the fences, police there to monitor. As far as we know, no charges laid. We want to ask how you feel about this. The question of the week this week, what do you think about the move to close Grace Life Church? And where do you think the boundary between public safety and our guaranteed freedoms, particularly our freedom of worship, lies? That's the question of the week, presented by our research and strategy partners at Y Station. You can fill it out by following the link at ryanjesperson.com. I'll be tweeting out the link later today. We had more than 2,000 people last week chime in and answer our question of the week about Alberta's curriculum overhaul, and we're going to get to that a little later on in this show. This is a great time to remind you that we're proud to partner with the team at Grand Dog Essentials Quality Raw Food. That's what we feed our dogs, Moses and Monroe. And Carrie and I, my wife and I, were customers of Grand Dog long before they joined us here on this Real Talk journey. We believe in the product. We have seen the results of their nutrition plans implemented, put into practice with our dogs who both have specific nutritional needs. Both of them, their guts are a little quirky. And the Grand Dog team has helped us sort that out. The dogs have never looked better, have never looked healthier, and the quality of life has never been better. If you go to granddog.ca, you can sign up using the promo code REALTALK, and they'll give you 10% off your first order. And don't forget, they deliver to your door if you're in Calgary, Edmonton, or Central Alberta at granddog.ca. Also, a big shout out to the team at Eden Landscaping. I know that they are chomping at the bit, ready to go I think it's their 21st year of turning dreams into reality and transforming your outdoor spaces, whether it's curb appeal on your front yard, whether it's a living space in the backyard, maybe an outdoor kitchen. That's my dream. I know when we mention what they can do, Sam, the outdoor kitchen is always the one I mention. I think that would be my dream.
As a frequent watcher and lustful watcher of HGTV, every time I see an outdoor kitchen, I just imagine myself with, like every piece of grillable produce I can imagine laid out in front of me, and a big pile of fresh steaks ready to go. It's like, oh my God, it just sounds so.
What's
amazing.
your favorite grillable produce?
Like a nice thick zucchini.
Oh, attaboy.
Big slab of zucchini, or like a portobello mushroom cap is really good.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
There you go. I had an amazing warm Caesar salad once. They took a head of romaine and grilled it.
Warm Caesar salad is underrated.
Fantastic.
I love grilled romaine.
Fantastic. The team at Eden Landscaping, I don't know, they'll probably throw in heads of romaine if you hire them. They've not told me that, but I would imagine if that was the deal breaker, they'd be willing to do it. Whether it's a swim spa, an outdoor kitchen, a stone patio, a fire pit, whatever you want, they can make it happen. You can check them out at landscapeedmonton.ca. Well, this is the worst kind of story to tell, quite frankly. Man by the name of Rob White is missing and presumed dead after attempting to rescue a stranger's dog. In fact, the dog did survive from ice on the North Saskatchewan River right by the Buena Vista or the Laurier Dog Park back on April 6th. Thousands of people are stepping up to honor Rob White's life and family. Sam, let's put up the GoFundMe page here at GoFundMe.com. I've tweeted out the link earlier today. You can simply search GoFundMe, please help honor Rob White, and you'll find the link. As you can see, the goal has been set, $150,000. Rob's wife, Roberta, his son, Strider, and his best friend, Chris Barrett, join us this morning. My friends, I got to be honest, I'm not quite sure what to say right now, except for that our hearts are aching along with yours. Roberta, I guess it's coming up on a week now, and I know that our members of our audience are going to want to know how you're holding up. How are you doing? This outpouring of support from the community, I hope, is bringing some encouragement to you at a time that must be impossibly difficult.
Yeah, there's no real words. We're still kind of reeling from this, right? Still reeling. I'm not even sure what to say. Strider here is just such an alliance or good representatives, because I'm just really, it'll take some time. There's no question. But the love, there's so many people that are showing up out of the woodwork, like from, 20, 30 years ago, right? That Rob has touched, so there's just many, many people coming forward that are just giving their blessings and love to us. So that is very helpful.
I didn't know that Alliance would be joining us as well this morning, and so I want to wish a good morning to you as well, Alliance and Strider. Your dad, people are describing him as one of the most generous people they've ever met, one of the most kind and compassionate and caring people that they've ever met. Strider, why don't you go first? Tell us about your dad.
Yeah, it's tough to just really like summarize it or put it, in simple ways. But yeah, those are totally great ways to describe him. Honestly, he was just compassion was absolutely something he operated by. I mean, honestly, all he did was love you, and he never, focused on the material possessions at all. It was always just the love that he had for you and the respect he had for you. And that's really just, how I remember him. It's just the love that remains left over, and all of the hundreds of people that he's touched with his heart, and genuinely gave the time and respect to talk to them and make an impact on them. So yeah, that's how I would, just remember him and think about him as just love, honestly.
Alliance, I was talking to a friend over the weekend, and we were talking about your dad, and we were talking about this story, and he said to me, my friend Howie said to me, he said, I bet a lot of people will be asking or will be putting themselves in that situation. They see an emergency, they see an animal on the ice, and they try to decide what they're going to do. And then my friend Howie said to me, he doesn't know your dad. He said, I bet you that Rob didn't think twice. Tell us about what your dad would have done in that situation, or what would have been going through his mind.
He definitely didn't think twice. And almost the funny thing is, I guarantee you he would do it again. He's so compassionate that it's not even a stranger, like a human that he went to save. It's just an animal, because he just knew that animal meant the world to someone, and there's so much love even for this dog. So he'd risk everything without thinking twice. And there's some people that probably like, why would you do that? That's dangerous. But that didn't matter at all, because he's just the most loving person you could pretty much ever meet.
Chris Barrett, go ahead, Bobby. Pardon me.
Well, I'm just saying that he wouldn't have even given it a second thought. Like, it just would have been an immediate reaction to do that. Right? Like, yeah, wouldn't have given it a second thought. Mm-hmm. Does
it help? Does it help in a way with processing this, to understand the message that and I'm going to call it his sacrifice, the message that it sent? I mean, what he communicated to the people that were there that day. Ultimately, I mean, I've been trying to walk a mile. I've been trying to understand this dog owner. I'm not sure if you've spoken with the dog owner yet. My understanding was you have not spoken with the dog owner yet. No. I can't imagine where their head is at through this. I mean, Bobby, how are you wrapping your mind around the whole circumstance?
Oh, well, you definitely want to reach out to that individual and just let them know. I'm sure that they're just stricken with grief, and we would just like to reach out to them and let them know that that's just something he would do. He would just do that. So don't feel bad. And I know they do. Of course, I know they do. But our hearts to them, if we could meet them and just give them a hug, because that's exactly what Rob would want us to do. And it's what he's taught all of us to do, the boys. So we would like to reach out to them and perhaps connect with them in the future here.
You are just a remarkable family. I am just so blown away by what I'm seeing and hearing from the three of you today. Chris Barrett reached out to our show, and we're grateful for it. Chris, my understanding is that you were Rob's best man at their wedding. Is that right? I mean, that to me is a pretty quick way to cut to the chase of how close you two were as friends.
Yeah, actually, Rob was my best.
Oh, he was your best man, right?
I didn't get to be his because he put a twist tie on his wife's finger and on somebody else's wedding and got married in the minister's office of somebody else's wedding. That's Rob. Yeah, we met back in the 80s, and he was my best man. Eventually became my bandmate. And if you could ever describe somebody who is a soulmate, who just has got that piece of your puzzle, that's the guy.
So, Chris, I'm sure then it sounds to me like maybe you weren't surprised to hear that he jumped in and risked his life and ultimately gave his life, we assume, let me say, through this scenario. Could you tell us a story that would provide some insight into your friend? What's something that you're always going to remember about him?
Yeah, he's just he would find you, and there's a little video up there, and I think about when I was just filming at a family gathering, because there's literally hundreds of stories, Robisms, we can call them, right? And everybody is popping up all over the place going, oh, you remember this and you remember that? But I was just scanning a video across my back deck, and there's 20 or 30 people at one of my kids' birthday parties. So here's my best friend. He's off in the corner. He's not noticing anybody. He was never the center of attention. You just kind of rolling the camera around. He will see you, and he just starts, signing "I love you" to you. So this is, to a man, 30 feet away in a crowd of people. And so he just had a way of being able to connect to, you, find you in a room, find you in a place, any one of you, and just make you feel like, nothing else mattered. Everything else just kind of faded away. And everybody who ever touched this guy or, connected with him is going to have some kind of sense about it.
Bobby, I have to ask the story about the twist tie wedding rings. I mean, we have to get into this. Will you tell us the story of your wedding?
Oh my goodness. Yes. Rob was very eccentric. So he had said, if we have a wedding, we either invite absolutely every person we know or nobody. And we had decided on nobody. And so we thought that we would just go and make it legal, right? So we were already married in our hearts. So it's like, so what are you doing Wednesday? It's like, oh, no, too busy. What are you doing Saturday? Oh, too busy, right? So we eventually were invited to somebody else's wedding. And on the way there, we said, oh my God, you're in a dress, or I'm in a dress and you're in a suit. Why don't we just get married today? Today's a good day. And so we spoke to the folks that were getting married, and we asked if we could use their minister, and we would just tuck away into the side office and just make it legal quick. So we agreed on that. And of course, we're in the office, and the minister just didn't really think that we were for real because, so he had asked us, you need a witness. And it's like, oh, darn, we need a witness. So we had to call back the bride and groom to actually stand and be a witness for us. And then, you need rings. And we weren't prepared that day. So he had run across the street to the Safeway and grabbed some red twist ties. And he showed up, and we were feverishly trying to put them together. And so I still have that to this day. And so, it's because it didn't, all those other things don't matter, right? It's like we were already in love, and, who needs a big group? Who needs all that stuff? You just need to know that you're in love. So I still have those twist ties today. Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's, our audience members here are responding in a big way to this. And Stephanie says, I can't believe how compassionate this family is facing this tragedy. I have no words. Daniel says, what an incredible family. It's odd that my heart breaks but swells at the same time as I hear them speak. Strider, I can't imagine losing my dad in a circumstance like this, but at the same time, I know that people are probably going to, try to take something from it. And it goes without saying, in a very safe way of saying that a son, and I want to ask both of you this, you and Alliance, will be impacted in such a great deal by his dad. What will be his legacy in your life?
Wow, that's a big one. It's his legacy. I mean, the thing, it's one thing I want to kind of to bring up and just sort of express is that, as Chris alluded to, anyone that came in contact with him just has a piece of him in a way. And I think Alliance had mentioned this. He raised a village of 10,000 children, it seemed.
Wow.
And so I am his son. I'm his biological son. Alliance is a biological son, but I have like 20 brothers and 20 sisters that grew up with me and Alliance, and he basically raised half of them, right? And it's like his legacy is in the hundreds of people that he inspired. He mentored and genuinely impacted so many people, especially young people, growing up and, getting into their own and becoming self-realized. And so his legacy lives on in all those people, and it lives on through love, right? And Dad, he was one of the rare people that was truly self-actualized. And so when you know someone who is like that, it's very easy to talk to them, very easy to get advice from, very easy to respect because he respected you and showed you love. And so that is how his legacy will live on. I mean, for me, he's gone, but he doesn't feel gone. Like my heart is full and bursting, and I just want to tell everyone around me that I love them. I look at my friends and I say, I love you, give them a hug. And that's how his legacy lives on, is through love and what he showed me. And I can't speak for Lance in that way, but I'm sure it's something similar, but that's how his legacy will live on for me.
How about with you, Alliance?
Strider summed it up nicely, because I call him the father to 1,000 people. And really what it comes down to is just care for each other, because he would always make time for you. You could meet him 5 minutes ago and come to him with, you need to talk to him about the most tragic, heartbreaking thing, and he would make time for you. Doesn't matter who you are. So really it just comes down to just love each other and care for each other, and that's all you need. Honestly, it's simple, but it means a lot.
Yeah.
Chris, this is pretty remarkable to hear, your best pal described like this by his boys, a father to 1,000 people. If anyone's, I'm holding back tears right now. If anybody were to be described as the father to 1,000 people, whoo, that's your buddy.
Yep. My 3 daughters are 3 of them. Yeah, that's absolutely. And that's the thing, is there's no hyperbole. You talk to people and you just know that it's authentic. Right? Everybody who's ever met them just leaves that impression.
Bobby, would you tell us about this book? My understanding is that there's a book that's like 900,000 pages or something, or 900,000 words. Take us into this book.
Well, honestly, I've never read it. I've heard a lot about it. Trust me. But he started writing this book when Strider was about 6 months old, and it has evolved. To him, he has said it's just his masterpiece. He's a man of 1,000 words too, because, he read an enormous amount and, just had a way with words. So with this book, it's several books inside of a book. So it's just not one, just one idea. And, it was his passion to have that published and to send that out. He had planned on living old and gray, right? Like he really did. He always said, I'm a late bloomer, it's going to take me a long time to get this done. And, he wrote it every day. Every day he spent time on that book. So we have an editor that he finally put a fence around it and got it out to an editor. So it's currently right there, Faith Farthing, which is just a wonderful, wonderful woman that we've met through Chris many, many years ago. And he had her name on a little sticky for 15 years, like 15 years.
Yeah.
And, when the time was right, he said that he would connect with Faith. And sure enough, she was still around. And, with her name being Faith, that didn't surprise me either for some reason, because, it just, how it works out that way. But yeah, it is 880 some thousand words. So it'll be really interesting to see it when it's done. So because we really want to press that forward, it was something that he had worked so long on that, and it was really important to him. So we're going to press forward and get that out.
Yeah, you say that, he had planned on living till he was old and gray. And this isn't a question for any of you. This is just a comment. It's just a statement. But Rob's all I've been able to think about ever since I heard the story. And that's the dog park we go to, and that's where we walk our dogs. And I think I know maybe approximately where he went in, and I can picture it, and I can imagine the frantic efforts. And I have firefighters that are friends that respond to river calls, and I know the the trauma that they feel and how hard they work to try to save people. And I can't stop thinking about the story. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is how at any given moment, our life can change forever, you know? And I've never lost a loved one to a drowning, but I've lost a loved one to a brain aneurysm that happened just as quickly, or a car accident, or people can relate. And there's, like I said, there's no question except for, you know, hearing you talk about him like this. And it's there. We will encounter people in our lives from time to time that just are on another level, whether it's intellectually or emotionally or whatever it is. And Bobby, your husband just strikes me as one of those people that, I mean, the father to 1,000 people, or like your son is there talking about his dad as like the most self-actualized person he's ever met, or Chris is talking about the impact he's had on the friend circle. And I just, one of the great tragedies here is that those of us that never met Rob will never meet him. But
you will, because, that's the thing. I could never hold on to him anyway, right? Because he was always, giving, like, it would, like, if somebody could drive down the street and would even stop, he would stop them and get, if they needed anything. So I knew I really couldn't contain him, because he really was so giving to the world. He really was. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just, my train of thought here.
Oh, and Bobby, I mean, you
selfless, so absolutely selfless, right? Like, he would just give you anything. And, of course, it's like, honey, we might need that in time. He's like, but the time is now. He never looked at a minute further than where we were today, right? So it's like, if somebody needs something right now, then you just do it. You just don't even question, right? So it's very, very selfless, very, very selfless.
He always lived in the now.
Yeah.
Right?
But, with all the stories, because it's not just, the people, I know that he's touched a lot of people, but it's just not the stories of the people I know. It's the people that he knew, that he's living on through other people. So I get to see him all the time. I get to hear his voice, through other people. Right. So that's what's, that gives me great comfort, that he's just spread around everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I said, it's like he's gone, but he's not.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
he's a very beautiful, eccentric, beautiful man.
Eccentric and beautiful, when combined, is a formidable combination. And, Dan, Chris, I just want to ask you, I mean, you're just sitting there nodding with a smile on your face, this is, it's a tough, can I say it's a really tough context to be talking about your best pal, in memory.
It's funny when I think about, like last week was just brutal. We literally, there was a house full of people that are falling, every 10 minutes and then back and forth. And it starts to circle around, and just kind of watching what, how the city's reacting, how folks like yourself are reacting. And then, one of the things we were talking about last night is just this power. We had such a powerful group of friends, like everybody does. And then everybody just disperses to the winds, and, you watch life carry on. And with what happened with Rob in the last week, we've all seen so many people come back that, you lose track of, or you lose connection with. And he really has that, just brings it all back to the simple bit, right? Hug your kids, keep those relationships alive, take the pictures, just take those moments and live them. And nobody I ever met had that simplicity, that there was just no pretense whatsoever. And to see him become, just in whatever, by saving a dog, to be able to pull so many people back together, and the city, I mean, what I'm seeing in the reaction from this is just such a powerful legacy to him, I think.
I've seen some people, Bobby, suggesting that they'd like to see maybe a dog park named in Rob's honor, and I know that there will be. Hey Sam, can you show me the family here just so I can get the wide shot here? Is that I heard a reaction there from one of you? Is that something that people have been talking about to you already?
Oh, well, we were thinking maybe a bench down there, actually, because he had collected heart rocks, right? So, I mean, we've got thousands of these heart rocks here. And, we thought maybe a lovely bench down there in his honor, and maybe with the rocks infused in that bench of some kind, because it's a part of him and it's not the normal bench, because he would never want it to be just like a normal bench.
Yeah.
Because he's just very, eccentric that way, very different that way. But yeah, we thought of something like that might be good.
That sounds wonderful. Let me read what some of our audience members are saying here. Daniel, Alliance and Strider, this is just a huge compliment to the two of you. Daniel says, your children are a reflection of yourself. Rob was obviously a great father. Tracy says, what a great memory of someone to be gifted with an opportunity to be so real to others and to leave such an amazing impression. Kim says, this is Alberta. Not people that make us look bad or fulfill stereotypes. People like Rob live among us. These are the people whose stories we need to focus on. And how about this from Linda Ray, who says, when one wonders what to leave their family in terms of legacy, this is what you leave: love and kindness.
Yeah. And, you just have to, he lived through creativity, right? And he said, because when I met him, he lived in a warehouse, right? And he used every inch of that warehouse. There's just no question. So when, I sort of kind of tamed him, but, to have a little bit of a normal life. I thought, well, you can take up whatever space you need, because here I am, you've left the warehouse for me. Well, he did. He took up absolutely every space he could. But he said that if he couldn't express his creativity, he would just explode, right? So, whatever that means for somebody. And to Rob, that meant every moment of every day, he was highly creative. He would, a cup on the table, well, he would take that and turn it into something, right? Like, just forever being creative. And to find somebody who is just that, his soul just came through his creativity. It was just so wonderful to watch, right? Like, just, it doesn't, we left the house, he would paper mache the couch, so we never really knew what was going to happen. If we left a can of paint around, we'd come home and the house was painted a different color,
Like, are you, like, Bobby, are you saying he actually literally paper mache'd your couch?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yep. I'm surprised the kids were a little littler then. And so I would just make sure that they didn't get, embalmed. It was just all the time, right?
Oh, man. Well, hey, this is, I obviously I know a lot of people are going to be interested in hearing this interview, and I want to make sure that everybody that can contributes to this GoFundMe. People can just search, GoFundMe, please help honor Rob White. You can search my Twitter at Ryan Jesperson. I've linked to it there. This is a way to honor Rob's life and honor his family as well, and provide some assistance and hopefully take away some stress at a very stressful and a heartbreaking time. Bobby or Alliance or Strider, is there something else that maybe, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but is there something that you could use help with, that the community can assist you with? Is there any way that people right now, that maybe even not monetarily, people that would love to, that would do anything to support you right now, how can they do that? Where do you need it most?
We're being very fulfilled, right? We're being very fulfilled by people already, just, their condolences and their caring. We're not a family that asks a whole heck of a lot, so I don't even know how to answer that really myself.
I think just as simple as it is, just tell the people around you that you love them. Yeah. That's just what Dad would want. That means more than anything. And thank you so much to the people who have donated and reached out and everything, but just tell each other you love them.
Yeah. It's like, we don't need anything. Just tell the people around you that you love them, honestly. That's really what.
Yeah. What's interesting is at this time, with COVID and whatnot, there's so many negative words out there. I hate this, I hate what's going on. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, all these negative words, and people are, even the younger crowd are finding it very difficult to find hope in a time like this. And, what's beautiful is all these words that describe Rob. It's on their tongue. It's inside of them. They're reaching for these places that are, they're far happier. All the love and compassion and kindness and giving, and it's giving, I think, people, another faith in humanity. It's still there, right? So I would like that to be pressed out there in just the hard times that are in the world today. So maybe that can be shared, right? Just remember the kind words that we all have inside, right? Instead of the negativity.
Absolutely beautiful. I am so sorry that, the three of you, the family and Chris, your best pal, and I know that it sounds like Mr. Rob White had a circle of influence that maybe in an ironic way, it sounds like it's going to continue to expand and continue to grow and actually grow stronger posthumously, which is remarkable. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to talk to us today. I'm so sorry about the circumstance. I am so, and I can speak on, I think on behalf of this audience, your grace and your wisdom and your compassion for the family, the other family here that has the dog, they're on their own journey, is just, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything or experienced anything like it. And I don't, and it's big if words fail Jesperson. If I can't find the words for something, that's a big deal. We love you guys. We love you. And we'll be here for you. One of our audience members, I can't remember who it's buried in the chat now. It goes way back, but they said, don't forget this family. When the story goes away and when people get distracted and when the months have passed, you will remain on this journey. And as a community, we will be here for you in whichever way we can. We're sorry for your loss, and thank you for doing this interview.
Yeah, and pushing that forward because he just so deserved it. Yes, he's very deserving. So thank you very much from our hearts to yours.
Yeah, thank you.
That's Roberta, otherwise known as Bobby, and Alliance and Strider, her two beautiful sons, and then of course Chris Barrett, who joined us as well. Chris, thanks for making this happen. Sending a lot of you. Sending all of you just a whole bunch of love and support. And Real Talkers, I want to remind you as well that this GoFundMe page is up. We encourage you, if you can, to join us in making a donation, making a contribution. Let's send a message to the White family how much we appreciate this legacy, whether we had the distinct honor of knowing Rob or not. Words fail, Sam. That is a remarkable family. I don't even know what to say.
I mean, neither do I, and it's interesting. I mean, you've been in this business way longer than I have, and doing interviews like this are never easy, but it's a testament that between the family members and the friend that we just talked to, that it was all laughs and all smiles around.
Yeah.
That means something when you're eulogizing someone and you can do nothing but laugh and nothing but smile. That's a life well lived.
The father to 1,000 people. I've seen some people on our live chat saying that could be the name of a documentary.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be the name of a book. And we always we talk to people. We say oftentimes when someone is lost tragically, we say let's remember them for how they lived, not how they died. Rob White kind of died how he lived, it sounds like. How he died is part of the remarkable story of how he lived. And I just, when I first heard that story, before we knew the story, we were aware of the helicopters. That was kind of the first, and people were saying, oh, there's a helicopter. There are a couple helicopters over the North Saskatchewan River, and Edmonton Fire Rescue's out there, and you kind of go, oh no. And then the layers to the story, you just went, oh no. And to have a chance to talk to the family, those boys, Alliance and Strider, like they've just lost their dad, but and I don't want to say the composure, because who cares about composure? But the maturity that they show, the wisdom, like I think it's overused. People talk about old souls, but one of our audience members nailed it there. Like, what a testament to how Rob White parented and the legacy that he and Roberta, ultimately will leave with their sons. How those boys turned out.
Well, and I mean, we're showing on the air this GoFundMe that's climbing towards $100,000, and we're talking to a family in mourning and saying, like, what do you want to leave people with? What do you want to think about? What do you want to need? And literally all that both of his sons could muster was just tell someone you love them.
Tell someone you love them. You know? Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. So, Real Talkers, as you can, and in your own way, you'll do it. I bet you somebody's going to write a poem. I bet you someone's going to paint a painting. I bet you people are going to do different things. If you know the Whites personally, dropping off a lasagna or whatever, and doing it like months from now too, and years from now too. This is a grief journey that will. I'm not a grief counselor, but this is their new reality right now, and also I don't even know if I should bring this up, but I didn't want to bring it up to them. There's also kind of the uncertainty of like Rob has not been found yet, which would carry with it its own heaviness, and so
misses that element of closure for
yes,
it, for sure.
And so I wish them. I don't know why I'm saying it now on the show if I didn't want to say it to Bobby's face, but I really hope that the family can find closure there as well and lay him to rest. And so anyway, Real Talkers, I'm going to tell you what, I'm making an executive decision because we were going to get into the results of our question of the week, and it's a whole bunch of people throwing hand grenades and really upset about this curriculum rewrite, and you are we don't blame you. As a matter of fact, it's the second most responses we've had in the history of this show. More than 2,000, I think it was more than 2,100 of you responded to this. But I think I'd like to save that for tomorrow, because right now we've just been reminded about grace and love and integrity and investing in people's lives and what it truly means to be selfless and what the word sacrifice means in this context. And I would rather we just wind up on a positive and talk about, how much we love people and be reminded to send a text today, maybe reconcile with somebody, call your parents. I'm going to start crying. I'm just so moved by this family, and I'm so devastated by his passing. So I want to end the day with positive reflections, which is perfect timing. But first, I got a couple of spots to get through, and then we'll get to this, because this is how we start every Monday's show. We hope on the right foot, giving you something positive to focus on. Before I get there, let me remind you that the teams at Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park are proud supporters of Real Talk, and this is a time where we know that restaurateurs and small business owners are really into one. They're in the trenches right now, so here's where we want to remind you that if you're feeling like it might be time to order a quick dinner from your favorite delivery app, or maybe hit a drive-thru, why not show some love? Why not show some support to the teams that have our back here on Real Talk, making these conversations happen? Mark and Michael are small business owners, local guys who own 6 locations in Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. When you see that DQ logo, pop in there, and as you hit that drive-thru, make sure you let them know that you're there, because you're a Real Talker. Wanted to give a shout out to the team at Clean Air Club. Can you call me up just even one of the tweets, Sam, that we saw over the weekend? Several of you got your shipments right to the door, your new Clean Air Club furnace filters. I love this from Jen, who says, I got my first delivery from Clean Air Club today. This is on April 9th, she let us know. She said, I'm so happy to support local. Thanks, Jespo. And then Angela let us know as well. Look at how this comes all packaged. I love, Sam, they put your first name right there on the label. How personal is that? She said, thanks for introducing us to Clean Air Club. CleanAirClub.ca. They get you on a furnace filter replacement schedule. Your family can breathe easier. Plus, you pay less than you would in store. So why wouldn't you do it? CleanAirClub.ca. Also, the team at Local Waste supports Trash Talk each and every Friday. We almost hit 8 minutes. Our Trash Talk last Friday was almost 8 minutes long. I couldn't talk for the rest of the day. I sounded like I had laryngitis, but I didn't. It was just Trash Talk, and I blame you, Real Talkers. I blame you.
What's going to happen when Trash Talk and the hockey season are back together again?
And I'm going to be doing the Edmonton Oilers T-shirt toss, and then I'm going to come in here and try to do Trash Talk. What are we even going to... I don't know what. You tell me. And we're going to need to get some, like... What is is it echinacea? What do people use for the echinacea and honey?
Honey, a little bit of lemon on your throat is nice.
If you see me, friends, out and about in the city, I'm going to be the guy that always has the scarf on. Like, I think, like, isn't that how Pavarotti used to roll? Didn't matter where he was or what the temperature was. He'd always have a scarf on. You know, you got to keep the pipes good. How did this become about me? At Local Waste, I had to remind myself which spot we're doing. They present Trash Talk each and every Friday. If you got something to get off your chest, we already have like 150 of them for next Friday. But you can send your rants, your gripes to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Oh, yeah, and Local Waste also is in the waste management business, so they have been for more than 25 years. They love to talk trash. They'd love to compete for your business. They'd love to remind you why they can do such a better job based locally than those big, nameless, faceless garbage companies, the big ones, headquartered in New York City. New York City! Check out localwaste.ca. And, of course, the team at Kubi Energy. They're in the solar game. If you missed our solar panel from a few Fridays ago, I encourage you to check it out. You'll find it on our YouTube page. Jake Kubiski is the founder and CEO of Kubi Energy, former oil sands guy, an industrial electrician. He's gone solar and built a really neat company doing installations in BC and Alberta. They'd love to help you find your solution at kubienergy.ca. Kubi Energy, each and every Monday, gets our week started on the right foot with a little something we call Positive Reflections. The reason I named Jake Kubiski by name, not just the founder and CEO of Kubi Energy, but he's also one of the real talkers that took the opportunity to submit a positive reflection today. So, with apologies to those listening on the podcast, if you're watching us on YouTube, check this out. This photo submitted by Jake, who wanted to remind us that isolation ain't all bad. He's listening to Real Talk on the podcast from his hot tub at a vacation property in Nelson, BC. He said, a reminder to Real Talkers, get your chill time in when you can. That looked to me to be a pretty beautiful view. We love this positive reflection from Neil, who wrote in. He said, my positive reflection on this week of Real Talk is inspired by the 1-year anniversary of No Pants Poker. You can check the hashtag. Don't worry, it is safe for work. No Pants Poker. Just over a year ago, at the height of our first lockdown, writes Neil, says, Ryan, our mutual friend, Luke, conceived of what we affectionately know as No Pants Poker, an online Zoom poker night. Hasn't been just any poker night, though, in part because we raise money for local charities. Every week, everybody pitches in $20. The winner donates the earnings to the charity of their choice. To date, they've collectively raised more than $10,000. He says, but what's made this weekly poker night truly special has been the connections and friendships that have been made. You want to show us the image? This is really remarkable. He says players have included people from all across the province, all walks of life, many different perspectives. People who in many cases have only ever met on Twitter or Facebook. New Democrats, liberals, conservatives, even centrists, atheists, Mormons, rural, urban, public sector, entrepreneurs. They gather every Friday to raise money for charity, to share stories, to laugh, to learn, even to shed the odd tear, and not just when Jespo takes all their money. Neil says, in a year when we've been isolated to a large degree, this weekly game has brought people together. It's forged friendships. It's broken down barriers created by social media. He says it's hard to describe just how special it's been, but it's been a bright light in an otherwise dark year. Neil says, as the undisputed outright leader in No Pants Poker victories, and I hate to confirm that it is true, he says, I'd like to thank Luke Fevin and all of the players, not only for allowing me to direct their donations to charity, but most importantly for all the good times and the great memories. That from Neil Koratash. I love it, and I hope to see all you No Pants Poker players again sometime soon. And why don't we wrap today with a positive reflection again on the life of Rob White. If you check out the GoFundMe, I've linked to it on my Twitter at Ryan Jesperson, if you can, even if it's $5, $10, or maybe just a note to the family. This guy, Rob White, is what it's all about. My thanks to his family, to his friend, Chris, for joining us, and to all of you for the sentiments that you've passed along. Let's walk through today with that positivity. Let's tell our loved ones that we care about them, maybe more than they realized. And let's remember that at any given moment, all of it can be done. Let's like that direct how we interact with one another today, for the rest of this week, and moving on. I love you guys. Sincerely, we'll talk to you tomorrow at 8:30 Mountain. Thanks for being a friend of Real Talk.